There is a sound that breaks every heart. It's not the roar of bombs, not the scream of fighter jets up. It's the cry of a mother who doesn't know if her child will come home. There is a silence that chills the soul, and not the silence of peace, but the silence after destruction, when everything that once was a broken bar no longer is. And in this silence, in this heartbreak, we are forced to ask, what is war really costing us? Not just on the borders, but in our souls, in our homes, in our humanity. The tensions between Pakistan and India are not just a clash of nations, they are a test of human character. When two proud peoples, sharing centuries of history, culture, and even blood, find themselves on the brink of war, it forces every one of us to confront a deeper question. What are we really fighting for? Not land, not flags, not pride, but control over fear, over anger, over ego. War tempts us with the illusion of strength. It promises justice. It offers revenge in a shiny box labeled patriotism. But when the dust settles, and the headlines fade, all that's left is pain. True strength lies in restraint and compassion. In a world that often confuses noise for power and aggression for authority, it becomes increasingly rare to witness true strength, to the kind that does not shout but stands firm, that does not strike but holds steady. We live in an age where emotional outbursts are mistaken for bravery, and impulsive reactions are often celebrated as signs of boldness. Yet, when the dust settles, it is restraint that prevents disaster and compassion that rebuilds what was nearly destroyed. In the context of rising tensions, especially between two nations like Pakistan and India, the real warriors are not those who wield weapons, but those who wield wisdom. Restraint is not weakness. It is control. It is awareness. It is the ability to feel the fire of rage and choose not to let it burn everything in its path. It is having the power to destroy, but the clarity to know that destruction is not the answer. When emotions run high, especially in times of conflict, restraint becomes the rarest and most powerful form of discipline. It separates the impulsive from the intentional, the reactive from the wise. Consider this: when a nation is wronged, the immediate reaction is fury. When a soldier is lost, a community mourns, and grief often turns to hate. This is human. But in that moment, if leaders, citizens, and families allow anger to become the driving force, then we surrender our humanity to our pain. Restraint means we feel the pain, but we don't let it speak for us. We allow space between stimulus and response. That space is where wisdom lives. Compassion, on the other hand, is the ability to see yourself in the other. It's the courage to believe that someone who looks different, prays differently, or lives on the other side of a border is still, at the core, a human being like you, hurting, hoping, and trying to protect what they love. Compassion doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't mean surrender. It simply means recognition of shared humanity. And in times of war or rising conflict, this is perhaps the most dangerous and powerful thing we can do to humanize those we are taught to hate. When we think of war, we often imagine soldiers, weapons, and strategy. But war begins in the mind. It begins when people allow fear and resentment to grow unchecked. It starts when we see them instead of us. When our thoughts become poisoned by the idea that only one side deserves dignity. Restraint stops that process. Compassion reverses it. A man who controls his emotions controls his destiny. A nation that acts with restraint avoids unnecessary bloodshed. A leader who embraces compassion writes history with wisdom rather than ego. Look around the world and you'll see that the most respected figures are not those who destroyed the most lives, but those who preserved life even when they had every reason to seek vengeance. That is the mark of true strength. There is a story of two young men, one from India, one from Pakistan, who met while studying abroad. Their grandfathers had fought on opposing sides of the war. They grew up with opposing narratives, each taught to see the other as the villain. But when they met, when they sat down to share meals, laugh over common jokes, and comfort each other through personal struggles, something shifted. Not because the facts of history changed, but because they chose to see one another through the lens of humanity. not nationality. They didn't betray their countries, they honored their future. This kind of compassion takes courage. It requires overcoming years of fear-based stories and standing face to face with the unknown. And restraint plays a critical role here. In order to practice compassion, one must restrain judgment. Restrain the need to be right. Restrain the need to win every debate. Only then can the heart open. Only then can empathy take root. In our families, we teach our children not to hit back. We ask them to speak kindly, to think before acting. And yet, when nations are involved, we abandon these principles in favor of pride. What if we raised our children not just to protect themselves, but to protect others from harm even when those others are considered enemies? What if we taught restraint and compassion not just as moral values, but as survival tools for humanity? True strength is the father who loses his son in war and still speaks of peace. It is the mother who lights a candle for the enemy's child because she knows that grief has no nationality. It is the young soldier who chooses not to fire because he sees himself in the eyes of the man before him. These acts don't make the headlines. They don't become viral videos, but they are the invisible threads holding civilization together. There is something profoundly powerful about a person who can hold their fire when provoked, because it means they are ruled not by others, not by the emotions of the moment, but by an internal code, a compass that values life over ego, clarity over chaos. That kind of person is immovable. That kind of person is the real pillar of any nation. Imagine a world where this was touted as power. Imagine if restraint was seen as a badge of honor, and compassion as a warrior's strength. It's easy to raise fists. It takes much more to extend a hand, especially after being struck. But when someone does this, they break the cycle of vengeance and create the possibility of something greater: healing. Every conflict in history, when looked at closely, reveals the same truth. It wasn't the strongest who changed the world, it was the wisest. The people who knew when to act, and more importantly, when not to. The ones who understood that words can save lives, and that listening is an act of love. Strength is knowing you can destroy, but choosing to build. It's being in control of your power rather than being consumed by it. It is holding the linear not of defense or attack but of integrity. Restraint gives you time to think. Compassion gives you the reason to care. Together, they allow you to act not just as a fighter, but as a guardian of life. And this applies not just to nations, but to each one of us. In our personal lives, how many times have we ruined relationships because we couldn't hold back a harsh word? How many times have we escalated situations because we felt we had to win the moment? What if, instead, we chose to pause? What if we chose to ask, what would love do here? That question changes everything. It takes us out of our reactive mind and into our reflective soul. And it's from this place that true strength arises, not the loud, showy kind but the quiet, immovable kind that can't be shaken by circumstance. There is a power in not needing to prove anything, a power in standing still when everything tells you to lash out, a power in understanding that your emotions are valid, but they don't have to be your master. That is the heart of restraint. And compassion is not weakness, it's unintentional, often painful choice. It's seeing someone who may have hurt you and choosing not to become like them. It's recognizing that behind every harmful action is a story, a wound, a fear, a past. This doesn't excuse harm, but it explains it. And understanding is the first step toward transformation. In every war, there are people who try to help, the ones who run toward the suffering, not away from it. Doctors who treat the wounded from both sides. Villagers who shelter refugees, even if they speak a different language. Artists who sing songs of unity when the air is thick with division. These people are not weak, they are the strongest of all. Because strength is not in how much damage you can inflict, it's in how much healing you can offer. Strength is walking away from a fight you know you can win, simply because you know the price of winning is too high. Strength is admitting your pain without letting it harden your heart. Strength is reaching across lines drawn in blood and history and saying, we don't have to continue this. The world does not need more warriors in uniform. It needs warriors of the heart. People who are willing to carry the burden of understanding, who are willing to absorb the fire so others don't have to burn. That is restraint. That is compassion. And they are not passive qualities. They require active effort, moment-to-moment choices, and immense inner discipline, to forgive when it's easier to hate, to step back when it's easier to strike, to speak softly when you are burning inside. These are the actions of giants. It is not weakness to feel deeply. It is not weakness to hesitate before you act. The greatest strength is not in hiding your emotions but in harnessing them, using them not as weapons, but as tools for connection, for change, for peace. So when you are pushed, when you are provoked, when the world tells you to respond with force, ask yourself, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? Do you want to be remembered for how many you defeated or for how many you lifted? Do you want your name attached to pain or to healing? The answer may not change the world overnight, but it will change you. And that change, over time, has the power to move mountains. War destroys, but unity heals. There is a truth so simple, so painfully obvious, yet it is forgotten time and time again. War destroys, but unity heals. It is forgotten when hatred drowns out reason. It is ignored when egos swell beyond boundaries. It is dismissed when propaganda becomes louder than empathy. But no matter how often we stray, this truth remains a quiet, unwavering light behind the smoke. War never comes without a cost, and that cost is never limited to soldiers, or borders, or battlefields. It spills into homes, into memories, into generations. It burns innocence. It stains the dreams of children. It twists the hearts of men and women until they forget what peace even feels like. War is the great eraser of all the beauty that humans can create. It turns cities into ashes. It turns love into grief. It turns hope into silence. And yet, somehow, despite all this, we return to Ida again and again. Why? Because war appeals to something primal. It appeals to pride. It offers the illusion of control. It convinces the wounded heart that revenge is justice. But revenge never heals up. It only passes pain forward. War does not resolve the fire. It feeds it. But uniting a broken bar. Unity is different. Unity is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't make headlines. It builds, one kind act at a time. It heals, one shared tear at a time. It grows, one moment of understanding at a time. It's not dramatic, but it's powerful. It's not quick, but it's lasting. You see, destruction takes moments. A bomb explodes in seconds. A gun fires in milliseconds. But healing takes years to decades, even generations. It takes courage to begin. It takes love to continue. And it takes unity to sustain. When two nations like Pakistan and India stand divided by borders and bloodshed, it is not just land that is being fought over. It is identity. It is history. It is pain that has been carried for too long. And yet, beneath the flags, beneath the slogans, there is something deeper that connects both sides. The human heart. A mother in Lahore and a mother in Delhi both pray for their sons to come home. A father in Srinagar and a father in Amritsar both work tirelessly for their children's futures. A child in Karachi and a child in Kolkata both laugh at the same cartoons, cry when they're hurt, and dream of becoming something great. Pain doesn't care where you're from. Neither does love. War doesn't discriminate when it takes life. Why should unity hesitate when it tries to save it? There's a story of two farmers, one from each side of the border. They worked fields just a few miles apart, separated by wire and history. They'd never spoken, but every morning they'd look up from their work and nod at each other, a silent acknowledgement. One day, there was shelling near the area. When it ended, both fields were torn, and both men lost everything. Weeks later, a small aid group began rebuilding homes in the area. The farmer from Pakistan used his share of supplies to help rebuild the other farmer's barn. When asked why, he simply said, "Because I know what it's like to lose everything." That is unity. Not grand speeches, not international treaties, just one human helping another in a moment of shared pain. That kind of unity heals what war tries to destroy. War shouts, unity listens. War takes, unity gives. War separates, unity joins. In every act of violence, a seed of hate is planted, but in every act of unity, a seed of hope is born. And hope is what builds nations. Not armies, not weapons, not walls. Hope. But unity requires more than hope. It requires effort. It requires maturity. It requires the humility to say, maybe my truth isn't the only truth. It requires people to listen, not just to respond. but to understand. It requires individuals willing to carry the burden of history without letting it poison the future. War always feels like the easy option in the short term. Push a button, send a troop, answer blood with blood. But unity takes patience, it takes vulnerability, it takes a heart strong enough to resist the pull of vengeance. It takes people willing to stand up and say, "We are tired of burying our children. We are tired of making martyrs out of our brothers. We are tired of fear." Because fear is what fuels war. Fear of being attacked, fear of appearing weak, fear of losing control. But what if we feared hate more than vulnerability? What if we feared misunderstanding more than compromise? The greatest wars ever fought began not with weapons, but with wounds, old, unhealed wounds carried forward by those unwilling to let go. But the greatest peace ever achieved began with courage, the courage to sit down, to talk, to forgive, even when the pain was still fresh. Unity does not mean forgetting the past. It means learning from it. It means saying, "We will remember," not to retaliate, but to ensure it never happens again. War thrives on division. It creates us and them. Unity dissolves those walls. It asks, "What do we share?" And the truth is that we share everything that matters: breath, blood, hope, fear, love. No child is born with hate in their heart. It is taught. Just like love can be taught, unity can be taught. But it must start with those who have the strength to rise above old stories. Those who choose to see humanity where others see the enemy. There are always forces that benefit from conflict, political, economic, ideological. But there are more people who suffer from it, and those people must become louder. They must become the voice of unity, not passive, not weak but determined. Because it takes a different kind of warrior to build bridges, a different kind of courage to say, "I will not be consumed by anger," a different kind of patriotic to say, "My love for my country does not require hatred for yours." Unity is not about ignoring differences. It's about embracing them with respect. It's about sitting across from someone you've been told to hate and choosing to see their humanity instead. It's about believing that we are not defined by the worst of our histories, but by the best of our possibilities. Think of the millions of stories that have been lost to war, the friendships that never happened, the songs never sung, the inventions never created, the families never formed, all because people were taught to fear each other more than to know each other. Now think of what unity could create: shared schools where children learn each other's languages, shared businesses that bring prosperity to both sides, shared cultures that celebrate each other's art, music, and stories, shared futures where a generation grows up not in suspicion, but in collaboration. This is not naive, this is necessary, because the alternative is endless suffering. Unity doesn't need a revolution, it needs small revolutions of thought, of heart, of action. It begins with choosing to believe that peace is possible. It continues with choosing not to fuel hatred, even when it feels justified. It grows when we speak with empathy, when we listen with open hearts, when we reach out when it's most uncomfortable. Because in that discomfort, healing begins. The power of unity is that it multiplies. One act of kindness inspires another. One conversation leads to more. One decision to forgive opens the door for many. Like a ripple in water, it spreads far beyond what we can see. And what war tries to destroy: a family, dignity, hope. Unity rebuilds. Slowly, strongly. A country can have the strongest military in the world, but if its people are divided, it is already weak. A nation can have the greatest economy, but without unity, it is fragile. It is the bond between people that holds civilization together, and that bond must be stronger than the pull of conflict. So when we talk about patriotism, let it not be just about borders. Let it be about building something worthy within those borders, something that lifts, not crushes, that connects, not cuts, that brings people together, not tears them apart. We do not honor our history by repeating its violence. We honor it by transforming its pain into purpose. By saying, "The suffering of our ancestors will not be in vain. It will become the foundation of something better." Because war ends lives, but unity gives them meaning. In unity, a child can dream without fear. A parent can plan without dread. A soldier can return home not to prepare for another battle, but to build a life. And that is the greatest victory of all. When a child in India cries for a father lost at the border, And a child in Pakistan weeps for a brother taken by war. Do their tears speak different languages? Pain has no flag, loss has no religion, and love has no border. Let this be our legacy. Not how fiercely we fought a broken bar, but how bravely we loved. Not how loudly we shouted a broken bar, but how deeply we listened. Not how we won wars a broken bar, but how we chose peace when it was hardest. The future belongs not to those who divide a broken bar, but to those who unite. So hold the line, not the line of fire, but the line of courage, character, and compassion, because in choosing peace, you choose real power.